In the silence of the soul we vow, no harm shall pass these hands somehow. A sacred law, so pure, so clear, the net our Lord forever near. Praise the knob, our guiding light, a shield of peace, our holy right. No hand shall strike, no force shall reign, for love of freedom we sustain. When tempests rise, when anger calls, let not thy spirit breach its walls. The covenant we hold so dear defends our path, dispels our fear.
Oh, woe to those who break the creed, their shame shall grow as planted seed. Praise the lamp, our guiding light, a shield of peace, our holy right. No hand shall strike, no force shall reign, for love of freedom we sustain. Excommunicate the hand that harms, cast out the rage, disarm alarms. Let shame be theirs who dare defile the sacred pact our virtues are. Praise the knob, our guiding light, a shield of peace, our holy right. No hand shall strike, no force shall reign, for love of freedom we sustain. Praise the knob, our guiding light, the shield of peace, our holy right. No hand shall strike, no force shall reign, for love of freedom we sustain. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Through my tongue is the tax code of night, highlight in hand, yeah, I'm feeling alright. Debating free markets till the break of dawn. Party so hard, Milton Friedman yawn. No curfew, no rules, I'm my own overseer. Even my mom said you're too cool, D. I trade memes on forums, that's my playground. Dropping knowledge bombs, making nerdy sounds. Libertarian life, it's super cool. Spending all my time with this heckin' rule. Freedom so fresh, got me dropping my jaw. Who needs a prom date? I got Mrs. and Law. I'm in I'm here quoting Rothbard, sharp and lean. I got a spreadsheet for every choice. Even my crypto's got a Bitcoin voice. Gerrymander my snacks, all chips to the right. Free range nachos, man, that's my delight. My squad rolls deep to the local debate. Popcorn in hand, freedom on our plate. No kings, no rulers, we're totally free. Except for my binder mark rules for me. Got graphs on my wall, then my Mona Lisa. Liberty's a puzzle, I'm the nerdy pizza.
This is a Dissident Media production. DissidentMedia.net.
In a world where everything sucks, two men have the balls to laugh at it. This is The System is Down.
Ladies and gentlemen, conservatives are infighting. It's the only news going on in the world. That is our territory as libertarians, and we are here to take it back. Let's go.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's very educational and informational programming is brought to you in part by, almost entirely by you guys, people in the Downers Club, people like Aaron, Michael, James, William, Sir Tur, Nathan Gall, Keenover, Guild, Kate, John Winshower, Bob C. for Drugs for Robots, Autumn, Sean, CD, Zareth, Zachary, Trashman, Abrogate Diaz, Maxwell, Steve, Noah, JC, Justico, Silence, Denise, Joey, Perry, Adam, Donald, Matt, Osmataz, Sean, Luke, Picard, Stony, Hefflumps, Level Zero, Rick, Ryan, Tim, Howie, a bunch more. If you want to get your name on that list and have it read incorrectly someday, go on over to patreon.com/The System Is Down, where you'll get more weird, more raw, more offensive, more generally weekly content. I say generally, it's sometimes weekly. It's content when we do it. And you get ad-free versions of the show. Either way, we might do an after-party day. We'll see where the night takes us. We'll see how nerdy we want to get and how spicy. But go join. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, there's a whole backlog over there at patreon.com/The System Is Down. So do that, and I'll love you forever. Or until you cancel your subscription. But I don't like to do this show alone. Tonight, we have something very special, a very extra special guest. A guest so profound that Dave Casey said he would rather blow his brains out than talk to our guest tonight about this topic. Not because of the guest, but because of the topic. We're talking about libertarian nerd shit, and there's a debate that was going around this last couple of weeks between Dave Smith and Liquid Zulu. Whoever that is, I'm sorry, I didn't know you until now, but now I do. And we're going to talk about that a little bit with the moderator of that debate from the Biblical Anarchy podcast, Mr. Jacob Winograd himself. Let's get the confetti. Hold on, don't talk yet. There we go. Confetti for Jacob. There you go. Jacob Winograd, how are you doing, sir? It's been, we haven't had the pleasantry of you actually being on the show, have we?
I've been on the show once. I think it was at the end. It was right after Trump was elected, I think, last year.
Okay.
Yeah, it was me, you, and Dave. Dave showed up for that one.
Sure.
But yeah, lots.
I don't remember that.
You know what? I think the issue is that this past year of Trump's first term has just been like 4 years of just nonstop. Like the amount of stuff that usually happens, especially coming off the Biden administration, where like we had a literal like corpse ruling us. So it felt like things were moving in slow motion. And now with Trump, we have like, 4 to 5 years of things happening within 6 months. So it feels like time is traveling slower because of just the sheer amount of just everything happening all at once.
I mean, is everything happening all at once, or are they just telling us that everything's happening all at once? Because I hear a lot of noise, but I don't see a lot of things actually happening.
Well, true. I mean, it's everything happening at once in terms of just like the bells and whistles and the psyops and the, there's been some things happening, but I made this point on my show maybe a month ago that like one of the issues of the digital age we live in is that we have an increased capacity to look into narratives and fact check government propaganda and discover it, but they're also able to up their ante
Debate on any
by
resolution against
putting
sufficiently
out
competent
10 times
opposition
more
if
uh, propaganda than they could before and,
Right.
and stuff. So
For all the AI that we have to create our propaganda, they've got 10 times the AI power. So yeah, as soon as, I mean, our one benefit is that we have, I feel like, a younger generation on our side. I don't feel like the government has a whole lot of younger generation on their side pushing or creating their propaganda. I know that Trump he's definitely got some sort of zillennial or somebody making his like ICE propaganda videos and stuff like that, because they're really weird and they're really just like stuff that they're trying to get to go viral. It's like they're not even trying to deport people nearly as much as they're trying to convince everybody that they're deporting people, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I've also gotten a lot of ads for me saying that I should join ICE. Like I've seen it pop up
Considered you
on
and your
like
father?
Indeed. And yeah, no, I was like, listen, no, not only for the fact that like even if I wanted to, there's no way there is not enough technology to scrub the internet and social media for me to apply for some kind of job within the federal government.
Right. Absolutely. Especially these days when, I mean, your job at that point is to go out and rip families apart. But that's a different conversation. We might get to it a little later. That's, I guess, kind of a bit of the underlying of some of these libertarian infighting arguments. We've had the abortion debates. We've had, the border debates and whatnot before, but it's still priority number one, it would seem, for a lot of people, as Donald Trump does push this ICE propaganda. But again, we'll save that for a little bit later. I don't want to spend the entire time talking about the debate or about Dave or Zulu or all of that stuff. I think you're going to be breaking that down later tonight on your show, right?
Yeah, I'll be. I'm doing 3 shows today, including this one. So at 9:30, I'll be doing just a solo show where I'll be kind of reacting to a couple posts and a couple clips from other people's shows who also reviewed the debate and whatnot. So I'll be talking about it, but that's going to be more of a post-mortem on the actual debate, which, I think we could talk about here, but I think we should also talk about like just the meta debate, like why we even are having this debate.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will touch on the debate here and there, but I don't want that to be the main, or maybe not the entire focus at least. But I wanted you, I know that I will probably get pushback of people saying, why didn't you have on Zulu to give his side of the debate? We already heard his side of the debate, and we've already heard him talk specifically to you, Jacob, on his side of the debate, separately from Dave and against Dave. And if you want Zulu's side of the debate, he also did probably at least 6 hours of breaking down those debates since then. So, yeah.
Well, at one point it was he did the 3.5 hour video, and then Dave came on my show to give a 2.5 to 3 hour response to that, which then Zulu did a 5.5 hour response to, and then I was like, guys, you guys just need to actually talk and debate, or we're going to get to the point where we're doing 12-hour response videos.
Right. It's like the slowest rap battle in history. Let's write the longest possible song and just to own and dunk on the other person. It's like, bro, I ain't reading that shit. I ain't watching it either. And that's been, I had some pushback when the initial video came out, because I said, oh, look, a 3.5 hour documentary of people attacking Dave Smith. I've been around this thing long enough that I've seen just everybody and their brother attack Dave Smith whenever he's doing well. And so naturally, my initial instinct is to go, fuck you. I'm not watching your 3.5 hour documentary. And then a whole lot of, quite frankly, if you can't say it in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 3.5 hours, man, come on. But I'm not spending 3.5 hours of my day watching that, but I had this swarm of people just start attacking me because I would dare say it's a waste of time without spending 3.5 hours of my life watching it, which is the first point of common sense, that it just seems to be so lacking in this type of person. Not specifically Zulu, but just this type of people in general that are so focused on the philosophy just seems to be lacking a little bit of common sense. If you think that I have, or Dave has 3.5 hours of time to sit and watch you say why he's philosophically inaccurate while he's on his way to do an interview with Joe Rogan.
To be fair, I think that part of the issue with the video is that even though Dave is used as the sort of archetype for what Zulu wanted to talk about, it's not exclusively about Dave. A lot of it is also a sort of postmortem on the Mises Caucus and the Liberty Movement. And so like it's not literally just 3.5 hours going at Dave. And yeah, I think that everyone's at a different point in their lives where they can just, like I have the luxury of, with the kind of job I do, that I can listen to podcasts all day long while I work. I understand for other people that's not going to be what they can do. And, perhaps Zulu could have made maybe you should make like a 60-minute Spark Notes version of it for other people. But I do think that it's one of those things where there are parts of his video that I think are inaccurate, that I disagreed with. And yet you brought up the whole like people always going after Dave Smith, and I'll give Zulu credit that like his attacks on Dave and the Mises Caucus, if you want to put them that way, are at least of substance compared especially to like the Loser Brigade and people who I don't necessarily want to name drop, but just back from like it's a this is how I kind of open our debate.
Certainly more principled, and I definitely agree with him on way more things than the other people, the other side that you're describing here.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So I just wanted to make a clear delineation between there are things about Zulu and his crowd that like I diverge even sometimes pretty strongly from, but I can at least like, I don't know, have a conversation with them and they don't call me a Nazi and try to dox my family or try to get, someone's kids taken from them. Like, I mean, so Absolutely. To be fair, that is sort of me setting the lowest of bars when I'm talking about this certain people. But I don't know. I just think it needs said because I think
that lowest of bars is what a lot of people have been dealing with for the last 10 years.
We're sort of conditioned to be like when someone comes after the Mises Caucus or Dave Smith or just our kind of like Ron Paul wing of the movement, we're used to it being just like literally like, blue-haired leftist screeching. And this is definitely different from that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't intend to like just dump on Zulu. If I were going to do that, I would definitely have him on to defend himself, so that's not my intention either. But I wanted primarily to have you on because you are still in that mindset. I mean, maybe the Tylenol is wearing off a little bit for me, but you're still in the mindset where you're like I've done a lot of playing devil's advocate and having a lot of patience. I've just kind of run out of patience, and I don't like hate these people or wish them ill. I hope that Zulu changes a whole lot of hearts and minds, but it's like I just wanted to have you here to discuss. Clearly you have a religious background to some degree, and I do as well. I just am seeing so many similar obsessions and cutoff points and excommunications and divisions of churches and whatnot that I thought that there was a parallel there that needed to be discussed. And you being the guy who's kind of the literal middleman in that conversation right now, if the zealotry of libertarianism has reached a point that we need to take a step back and reprioritize.
I think there are a lot of parallels between what's going on in Christendom and within the libertarian movement. And there's sort of two tensions or two problems that in both worlds I feel like I need to be fighting against. And it's sort of the tension between sort of the what you could say like the gatekeeping, the ideology or the religion, and to try to make sure that you're consistent and to try to make sure you're not diluting the message versus going so far in that pursuit that you fracture yourself to the point where it's just like, and I've literally been part of churches where like, we're the only church in America that actually believes what the Bible says or something like that. And it's a very important problem. And I think it's easy for a lot of us because and I'm sympathetic to this because like we live under the most totalitarian state and empire in modern, kind of like written recorded history. Yeah. And we could easily say that getting too bogged down in the weeds and philosophical consistency might not be the best use of time, and that we should try to just hold to like some kind of like 80-20 rule where we're like, hey, let's just focus on the things where we all agree and try to make progress on that. And I'm really sympathetic to that. there is something though to maybe where Zulu and his camp are coming from, which to make a Christian comparison, you can think about certain denominations, like you could say like the Methodist Church, even the Catholic Church is going through some of this struggle where
Yep.
if you don't do enough gatekeeping, you don't do enough like trying to uh, put the time and effort into defending and preserving the true doctrines and teachings, then you get a lot of infiltration, and then the denominations that I'm pointing out to you will have churches that are just completely taken
Yeah.
over by leftist infiltrators, and they're no longer like it's the female pastor with the blue hair talking about how Jesus loves your trans kid, and it's just like so.
I understand that, but this
Problem we're kind of
the
seeing
Dave
on both
Smith
ends
Zulu
here.
thing feels more like sorry to I'm going to lose this thought, but it feels more like the current like Skillet is demonic because they dared play a Christian song at Christmas and made it heavy and stuff. Like that's the kind of split that I feel like we're really talking about here. It's just the splitting hairs split. I understand that we have to hold people accountable if they're speaking for us and representing us in these high positions, but I'm just kind of like, if you're so zealotous that Dave Smith, you can look at him and what he's doing and all the good that he's bringing and say he's not only not a libertarian, he is the enemy of us. I'm like, well, then I'm not a libertarian either, sir. And
Well,
if
right. So this is
Skillet
and
is demonic, then I guess I'm satanic as well.
yeah, no, I think that that's completely fair, and I agree with you. And this has been kind of my point to Zulu's camp is to say, listen, maybe you think there are some in the movement, especially after the whole kind of like strategy of voting for Trump and coalitioning, and maybe you think there are some who have just really lost their way, and if you think, you could, we said we weren't going to focus too much on immigration, but if you're thinking whatever nuance you want to say there is in the theory about movement, we see libertarians who are out there defending ICE and doing mass deportations and militarizing the police even further, and you're like, okay, well, there are at least some people who are going too far, and so you have this need to kind of like try to rein people back in. But I agree with you that, and I made this point to Zulu in that debate. I kind of took the moderator hat off for a second there and was like, okay, but like where you're drawing the line does seem to kind of put not just Dave on the outs, but Rothbard and Hoppe and Mises and Kinsella
And like
and
90% of the rest of
Murphy.
us.
Yeah, right. And my disagreement with them is that they kind of double down and go, well, that's good. Like, we'll just like we got to gatekeep, and if those people end up on the out, then like we're just preaching to the remnant, and anyone who wants to compromise, they're not the true radicals, and so we can go on and be without them. And I'm like, okay, I understand they have arguments to defend why they believe that position, which are sort of like have some truth to them in terms of that, like, yeah, sometimes very radical, minorities of people who have a very strong ideology can sort of shape history and movements of people and whatnot. But it does kind of get into, I mean, the devil's a little bit in the details. And I think some of this is semantics in terms of just how we even define these terms and how we define libertarian and how we define or distinguish between ethics and a legal theory. But just on a more meta level, I think that the reason I agreed to do the debate and have kind of been, to sometimes my detriment, like sticking up for Zulu and even having him on my show beyond just that debate, is because I think that even where I disagree with Zulu, and I still identify more with, I guess, the Dave Smith, Ron Paul wing of the movement, I do feel like sometimes we just need to be more willing to take on these criticisms and have these conversations, and like to some extent the shutting down of the conversations, and then like we all retreat to our echo chambers, and then like now again, even there's a slippery slope to now we spend all day online and debate me bro, theory bro debates, and I'm not saying we should do that either, but I mean it goes both ways. Like, and Dave did kind of, you could say, start this almost 2 years ago by calling libertarians who were for open borders at that point in time, at least, worse than communists and worse than worse than communists, which is kind of a big thing to say.
Was that comment only on them being open border libertarians? I'm not familiar with the quote, but I've heard people say it. I don't know what it's in reference to.
It was on Clint's show. and I forget all the context, but it was just Clinton like reported on a story or something, and this was like in the midst of the Biden administration where there was, and I think we've kind of seen evidence come to light on this, like there was definitely a concentrated effort by the Biden administration to not just kind of like leave the border alone, but to import
Yeah.
millions of people, not just from South and Latin America, but from, all sorts of different places around the world. And Zulu and his camp would agree that like we're all against that. Like that's not what anyone wants to see or wants to advocate for.
Sure.
And Dave in that context was like, by any means necessary, we need to shut this shit down. He said we need to bring home our military, stop being the world empire and secure our border. Like put the military on the border, secure our border, stop this shit. And it's like, and like the open borders libertarians, like if you're saying we have to be absolutists on open borders right now, then like you're worse than a communist.
Yeah.
That's the best the context I can recall.
Yeah. Quite frankly, I don't know. Like debating theory at all is kind of boring to me at this point. And I was really into it. Like I'm not a hater. I was really into it for like 10 years and now I'm just kind of fucking bored with it. But I would say the best debate that I've heard on the open border, closed border libertarian is between Dave Smith and Spike Cohen about, 4 or 5 years ago. I felt like that was a very healthy, respectful conversation where they both made a lot of good points, and I would recommend people go find that. I don't remember whose show it was on, probably Mark Claire's or somebody. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was actually Lines of Liberty. It might still be out there somewhere. But yeah, as far as that goes, I don't know. Like, I don't like the idea of open borders, and I also don't like the idea of children being pulled out of school, the middle of school, or people being injured or anything like that. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the right answer is. But again, this is not where I want to spend the entire time. But go ahead.
Well, I'll just say, like, again, I get your point, and I'm often kind of in agreement with, I guess, like, I think it was Pete who made this expression once, and he's not really a libertarian anymore, but he said, like, we have to be careful not to live in Ancapistan in our heads. Like, yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think it's a given that there is some perfect NAP compliant way out of the totalitarian nightmare we're in now. I think we should be humble and say none of us are, none of us can reasonably say we're certain what the path forward is.
Right.
But to make that Christian comparison again, like when you have churches, when you have churches that are like, preaching things like trans kids from the pulpit, then like part of that solution from like the Christian perspective is to get back into the theory, to make the comparison, or into the biblical doctrine and be like, well, does the Bible actually teach about the identity of men and women and what marriage is and what humans are in relation to God's order? And like when you don't spend any time in the theory, so again, that's why I think it's a both and I feel like I'm so yeah, that's why I think these conversations are important, because I feel like we have some, to be fair, I think it's both ways. I think we have some people who are literally just so committed to the theory they're almost like monks. Like they're just in monasteries. They're just like
literally living in solitary.
But they're not actually out there bringing more people into the church, spreading the gospel message.
So you're a more evangelical libertarian, you're saying?
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Right. Which means we do need to be principled, but we also have to not be like seeker sensitive, but not be like, if I like, we don't want to be the libertarian equivalent of like the street preacher just kind of holding up the like, repent or go to hell signs on street corners.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to I want to briefly get a little bit of your understanding or your worldview, being the biblical anarchy guy. I'm sure you have had anarchists cringe at the biblical side, and you've had Christians shudder at the anarchy side. So can you give, like, just so I understand better where you're coming from, the elevator pitch? Because I'm sure you've had to give it at least a time or two.
Yeah, of course. So biblical anarchy has kind of several different meanings. On one hand, the most basic, sort of like non-controversial meaning of it is it's just a restating of like the mantra "No King but Christ," which just means that any Christian should agree that we live for Christ and his kingdom first, and we don't view other human institutions and governments as being like having the same sort of claim to authority or divinity or sovereignty that Christ has. And so, this world is not our home, as the Bible says, and we're ambassadors here. So that's kind of like the quick pitch I make to people. But then like the sort of layer underneath of that is then, there's another layer which I won't focus on, which is that I'm a Protestant, so I think that the interpretation of the scripture is necessarily done in a decentralized fashion. I love my Catholic brothers and sisters. I know Amity's in the chat, and so I don't want to do a whole Protestant Catholic debate here, but I
get
don't
Buck Johnson
think,
in here to fight you.
yeah, I don't believe that the proper interpretation of scripture is created through a like one church, one infallible institution that gives us the correct interpretation. So that's more of a side, though. The other thing, the main thing I focus on in my show is then that I don't want to say that the Bible teaches libertarianism, but rather that the Bible creates a worldview, and it does teach ethics, and that insofar as the teachings in the Bible do have lessons imparted on what the right use of force is and what the role of human authority and government is, I think that if we're going to, do systematic theology and take all those passages and read them and come up with sort of like, what is the best Christian political theory, and then we look at that in comparison to other political theories, libertarianism is the most consistent expression of Christian political thought. And I think it's just, to say it another way, like it's kind of hard to love your neighbor and commit aggression against them.
Sure.
So I think that's the kind of the most basic pitch.
It is hard to love your neighbor and commit aggression against them, and it is also sometimes a little bit tricky to figure out where the line is of aggression. But continuing on the comparisons to the Christian stuff, first off, in the world of Christianity and your worldview, are all sins equal?
No, not all sins are equal. This is sort of a misnomer that I think happens mostly in evangelical circles, unfortunately. And it is true that all have fallen short of the glory of God, as it says in Romans, and that, even someone who could say, well, I'm the one who has committed the least sin in all of human history, and my sins were so much, lesser in their sinfulness than everyone else's. It's like, okay, but like your sin was still sufficient to damn you. Your sin still separated you from God to the point where you needed redeemed, just like every other person. So that is the actual like truth, to where some people will try to say that all sin is equal. It's like, well, no, it's not that all sins are equal, but just that all have sinned, and that even the most minor sins in our mind, and even you can make a biblical case for there being minor sins, but they're still damning. But yeah,
Whatever
absolutely.
you can justify doesn't mean it's justified. Like whatever, just because you can find a way around it doesn't make it okay. Is that what you're saying?
Well, right. Like you can say that, like, just to pick something kind of non-controversial, you could say that lying, or not, like adultery. So like cheating on your spouse with another consenting adult is immoral, is sinful. Now, you could always say, well, that's nowhere near as sinful as like being a serial killer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a serial rapist or something like that, or like, being a regular. You're in better moral ground, less dubious ground than like an Epstein frequent flyer person, right? So, but that doesn't mean that the sin isn't still damning. Doesn't mean that it's still not a sin that is both against the people you're sinning against and against God, and it separates you from God and puts you in the position of
by separates, do you mean like separates you currently or damns you to hell? Fire and brimstone and whatnot.
So like before you are born again, when you were just in the natural state, your sinful nature and the sins you commit puts you in a state of separation from God, meaning that you are destined for hell. You are destined for eternal damnation and eternal death. That was the initial. In the garden, it said that if you when they disobeyed God, like if you do this, the consequences will be death. Now, God forestalled that consequence and that death, where he could have just wiped the slate clean and said, you're all dead now. But instead, it's more of this like gradual thing. Like, we live lives, our bodies decay, and we die. And if we die not having atoned for our sins, then we die and we are destined for hell and eternal death. What we believe the gospel message is that Jesus, when he came and died on the cross and was raised up on the third day, that in doing so, he paid the wages of sin for us, for the world, and he conquered sin and death. And so he's broken that curse. Now, so like, if you are born again, if you sin, Jesus has paid for that sin. You still have to repent of it. And like, this is the difference between, in Christian theology, justification and sanctification. So you'll still struggle with sin as a Christian, and your sin might temporarily like create this sort of like dissonance where like you feel separated from God, but it doesn't mean you're eternally separated from God once you have been born again. It just means that you are still awaiting the full culmination of that saving process, which starts with justification, but we then go through sanctification, and then our ultimate hope is to be in our perfected bodies, sinless bodies, in the new heavens and new earth with our Creator and with Christ in eternity.
So yes is your answer.
Yes.
No, just kidding. Quite frankly, respectfully, I disagree with you on some things there, but this isn't really about me or what, and I'm not here to debate you on Christian theology. I just want to get a bearing on where you stand on the hell and the sin and all that stuff, because I'm seeing a pattern. And the main topic in this debate, or a parallel in the main topic in this debate with Dave Smith and Zulu, the main point being this whole "would you steal a dollar, would you steal a penny" conversation. And it just feels like all sin is equal to me. So it feels to me like this is not only a religion, but Zulu in this case is more zealotous in his religious doctrine than you are in yours.
The person you love the most in the world was going to get tortured to death, and you could steal a penny or a dollar to stop it from happening. Like, I thought the whole call was that you will bite that bullet to my face. So like, are you actually saying you believe that and you would do that with someone you love?
Yes, I believe it would be immoral to steal a penny or rape a baby or any other aggression. I believe that would be immoral.
Now, just the fact that you go from steal a penny immediately to rape a baby, like, that alone is enough for me to be like, bro, what are we talking about here? What, like,
well, I can.
Would you steal a penny?
Context.
Yes. Or no, I wouldn't steal a penny, nor would I rape a baby. Okay, well, that leap there is why it's hard to take you seriously, but feel free to explain this to me.
Well, so I've had this conversation with Zulu, and his argument is that he doesn't believe that it would stop at like stealing a penny, that like someone who is that irrational, who is like, unless you steal that penny, I'm going to murder your child. It'd be like, all right, well, you steal a penny, and then they'll just keep on raising the bar. And I think he's right that there is a limiting principle here.
But if you had evidence that stealing the penny would stop the torture of your grandmother, you would do it, right?
Well, yeah, so I agree. So here's the crux of all this, right? And this came out in the debate, is that what Dave says, and I agree with this, I think you agree with this, is that we would, even though I would acknowledge it's still theft, and whoever I stole the penny from could, bring a tort against me, bring a charge against me, and, bring me before a judge. And, I would have to say, yeah, I stole that and stealing is wrong. But we would steal the penny to save our child. But that doesn't mean that we're saying that all violations of the non-aggression principle or all aggressions are equal. So yeah, like there's obviously a point at which like, yeah, I would not rape or murder to save my child, because those are different than stealing a penny.
They mentioned them, but go ahead.
What Zulu and his crowd are then asking for is, and this came out in the debate, and Dave did not have, well, he admitted he doesn't have an objective standard for this. He's like, well, there is no objective, like, here's the clear delineating standard or principle on why we would violate the NAP in some instances, but not in others. And that to some extent, this goes based on common sense, on what is reasonable, on what is like, you appeal to a jury of your peers to sort of work that out. And I'm more sympathetic to that argument, but Zulu and his crowd think that this is what they call whim worship. That basically, like, well, because you don't have an objective standard, you're just appealing to emotions, and so this is abandoning libertarian theory in their mind.
Yes, it's just like if you're not with us, you're against us, and us is a very rigid religious structure. It feels like to me. And
well, they're very
you can-
similar to like the religious fundamentalists in a way, and
Sure.
again, like the religious fundamentalists were reacting to theological liberalism. Again, I keep connecting it because like I can understand where I think Zulu and his crowd are going too far, but I understand like they think the reason the libertarian movement has faltered is because it compromised on biting these bullets and
Yes.
maintaining this purity.
I'm all for gatekeeping. I'm all for 1,000 Liechtensteins or whatever, and I would bet that Dave would not live in Zulu's Liechtenstein, and I wouldn't hold it against either of them. But I think that with the logic of, well, if you would steal a penny, then it would somehow ramp up to escalate to the point of raping a baby. You can also look at that another way, which is the logical common sense way of if all they're requiring is stealing a penny, not only is that not a big deal, but nobody would be offended by it. Nobody would be offended by you stealing $1 to save your grandmother. Like, you can say that it would inevitably ramp up, but more realistically and more logically, nobody would be offended at all from the start. Yes, I don't know where this hypothetical scenario comes from, or like, I'm sure that there's no actual real world application to it, but to not be able to say, yes, I would take $1 that nobody would even notice is missing. I know that means that I support taxation and stealing money from everyone, to just robbing the entire country to save my grandmother who's in the hospital. But that wasn't the question. And I understand that it's ideologically consistent to a fault, I would say, to the fault where you completely lack common sense and lack some sort of humanity there. If you can't say, yes, I would take $1, and I would certainly pay it back, and I would hope that Zulu would get off his ass and make $1 to pay to save his grandmother, because I would save Zulu's grandmother for him.
So, yeah, like I feel like, and I kind of tried to press Zulu on this in the debate to be like, listen, man, like I think you can make your argument, but I think your argument would be received better if you would just acknowledge the humanity of the situation, at least as part of your answer, to be like, and I've seen other people who are maybe more sympathetic to Zulu than Dave make this point where it's just like, yeah, like most of us would do that. I think even at one point, like Zulu was like, yeah, there's breaking points where even if you say this is aggression, you're just because of just like your own weakness or your own like inability to see a solution, you'll do that. But he's like, but it's still wrong. That you still have to insist that it's still theft. And my whole point was like, but I think that's by Dave's own admission that he would have to appeal to a judge and be like, yeah, I did steal. Here are the circumstances, and beg for mercy. He's acknowledging that, yeah, that was a criminal act.
Yes, it's wrong. And watching your grandmother get murdered is worse.
It's also
it's
right.
just
And
worse.
This
it's
is
not
part
also
of
wrong. It's infinitely worse.
Well, right. So this is part of the crosstalk here is that I think you and me and Dave, we're all coming from either a Christian or at least a more Christian informed sort of worldview, and Zulu and his crowd are coming from a objectivist.
I'm
or
pretty
at
sure
least
there was a point in the conversation where Zulu said, I'm not very familiar with Christianity. And this is not a dig at all. It's like, could that be the problem, that you're just so invested in this thing because you don't understand? And I'm asking you this because you're objectively more Christian than I am, or more invested in that world than I am. But is it a lack of another belief or another theology that makes it such a zealotous fervor?
So like, I don't want this to be insulting to Zulu and his crowd, but like, I guess it's kind of hard to not make it sound that way. Cause like, I would say yes. Like, I do think, and this was sort of like, I think OG before the DW, Jordan Peterson's, most fundamental insight was that it's not a matter of if you will worship something, but what do you worship?
Yeah.
And I think that to some extent, the Zulu crowd, not like all the time, but there's some truth to this where I think they have made the nap this, and they say like, well, because the nap is a principle, that means it's just like there's no exceptions to it. It's always binding, and you have to adhere to it at all costs. And when I hear that, like, yeah, like that does sound like you are holding this principle up with a sort of religious fervor. And they're also sort of, in my opinion, borrowing a little bit from the Christian worldview when they do this, even though they're objectivists, because they sort of say, well, following the principles that are good will lead to outcomes that are good, because otherwise, like, how could you have a reality where doing what is right doesn't like lead to positive outcomes happening? And I just think, well, I can kind of say that as a Christian. I'm not sure where, from a atheist materialist perspective, you have that kind of faith that doing the right thing will always work out. I mean, Dave tried to make this point in the debate, and I've tried to make this point to them too, and they honestly just kind of dismiss it, at least as far as I see. But I'm like, listen, like, Palestinian babies, you know, who have been raised in Gaza for the last 15 years, who are now like 15-year-old teenagers in Gaza for over the last, 2 years of the war there since October 7th, 2023. Like, they're not in the bad situation they are because they personally abandoned the non-aggression principle or morality or anything. Like, there's all sorts of externalities and factors where, like, doing the right thing. Now, I think as a Christian, doing the right thing, even if it costs you your life, is sort of like, well, you do that because you have faith in a higher power that makes all things right. I don't know where you have that kind of faith, though, without that's kind of a key ingredient in faith, I think, is like having that higher power, not just like this abstract principle, because clearly if all that exists is this world and this life, well, then just doing what's right all the time doesn't always lead to you having a better life or better outcomes for groups of people.
Yeah. And that kind of, that if you think that libertarianism is this ideology that you can spread to everybody across the world and they will have the same glorious outcome, that's a religion. Like, that's not realistic. That tribes in Africa, you can get them to all agree on the non-aggression principle, which the non-aggression principle, I mean, I would imagine a whole lot of societies, including America, tend to have a hard time even wrapping their brain around the non-aggression principle. So how do you push that without it being some sort of spiritual, moral foundation that, I feel like within our little bubble of the liberty sphere, we all accept, yeah, the non-aggression principle, yes, it works when applied, but we're kind of just applying it to our own worldview and not all these other societies. It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely stupid, and I'm certainly no philosopher or pretending to be, but it just seems hard to believe that everybody can ever just go, yes, we'll all agree on this one thing that not even libertarians can agree on, what it means to non-aggress on your neighbor.
Well, yeah, I think that's certainly a valid point. And I think the other thing, though, because to some extent, that's almost, again, what I've said before, which is that I think everyone needs to be humble and just realize that, like, none of us we don't even know how to just get our government to obey the Constitution. Let alone,
don't even know how to get our party to obey their own bylaws.
Right, exactly. Like so like we're so far off from figuring out like what's the path to ANCAP. We don't know the path to minarchism or constitutionalism or just like, hell, I would settle for, like, I don't know, the government we had under Bill Clinton. That's how desperate I am to roll things back. It's like, please just give me back the 90s, man. I'll take the government and the culture from the 90s. That is like the level of desperation and scraps that I'm begging for here. So I see someone in the comment who, I don't know if it's Phobes or Phoebe said the solution to this problem is incredibly simple. If you disagree with the foundational principle of libertarianism, just refer to yourself as something else. I just think this is silly because I don't know.
That's
where
assuming that you know what the foundational principles are, mean, what the exact properties are. And this also, once again, ties it back to the church. Like, anybody who's insisting, I've got this all figured out and you need to listen to what I have to say, I'm just not gonna.
Like I'm very sympathetic. I think you've even seen here, like there's points that Zulu and his crowd bring up that I think this is fair. And like I've gone out of my way to try to even platform them, to try to like even tell Dave, like, hey, I know this feels like a really
you put your name on the line to be like, this might be worth your time, worth the conversation.
Well,
so
and
you
like
put your
there's parts
reputation
of
on the
it,
line.
there are parts of it that I understand are like uncomfortable, and parts of it that are like, this is so deep in the weeds of theory, is it worth having the conversation? And I felt like even though there were parts of it where I was kind of like, this is a little bit cringy, I still think overall it was worth having, and these conversations need to happen. But it does kind of get like when people say to stop calling yourself a libertarian because you don't agree with the foundation. It's like, well, we all agree that the non-aggression principle is like it's the only legitimate like rational basis for law, and I make that argument from Christian perspective too. But if you're telling me that to be a libertarian means not only agreeing with the non-aggression principle, but that I have to have this dogmatic sort of like zealot, agree with you, which means this sort of like dogmatic zealot like adherence to it in all situations, and to say that there's no fuzzy parts of life where like we as human beings operate by more than just libertarianism and looking at things through a strict lens of the legal theory. Like, no, that's not how human beings work. I feel like what they're missing from their worldview isn't just religion, but an understanding of human psychology and sociology. And then also, I would just like to ask this person, like, what should I call myself? Like when I go to my average Christian brother or sister and I tell them, and they ask me like, what do I believe? And I'm like, well, I think that it's wrong to initiate force against peaceful people. And I think that applies even to government. And I think the right way to govern society is to abolish the state. And then they're like, oh, so what? Like, you're a libertarian anarchist? It's like, nah, I'm not. What am I then? Like,
that's the problem. Like, it's denominations of libertarianism that we're talking about. It's just
it's
separating further. And I know decentralized, sure, but guys, like if our entire purpose is to attack other libertarians for not being libertarian enough, then we don't have a purpose. We don't have a function. You're just gatekeeping nothing, because like, even like you talk about, you made the comparison of gatekeeping in certain denominations and certain churches and beliefs for the sake of keeping out certain views that are, infiltrating, like liberal views infiltrating the church. But in this case, we're not talking about your eternal soul. We're talking about this heaven on earth, this utopia of libertarianism that supposedly will happen. It's not even promised in the slightest, and if you think it's going to happen, you're probably delusional. So you're talking about it with the same fervor as though we are going to this utopia guaranteed after we die. We're not. It's not happening realistically, and I don't think screeching at Dave Smith for not being libertarian being libertarian enough is the way that we get to libertarian utopia. And if that's not the case, or if you disagree, then I guess I'm not a libertarian. Call me whatever you want. Same for Christianity. If me believing that Christ is the Son of God and having some questions on some things makes me not a Christian, I'm okay with you having your group, your clique, your label, and taking that. But I'm just here still trying to say I identify most closely with both of those categories until they get so insufferable that people just start heading for the hills.
No, I agree with that. And I think that these things are often in flux. And the problem is we have both happening at the same time in both Christianity and libertarianism. Like, there for sure, there are people who fit the archetype of what Zulu was talking about. People who I think have either mostly or completely abandoned principle, or maybe were never principled to begin with, who have literally just said, like, we need to not really care about the principles or the theory at all, and we just need to try to like just go out there and appeal to normies by just appealing to their sensitivities and just trying to like do whatever works to and like I think that's sort of what the old guard of the LP did. That was kind of like the whole premise of the Mises Caucus takeover was
Bill Weld, Gary Johnson.
Push,
yes, they did that.
to push against that. Now, you could say that, listen, to the extent that part of Zulu's video was a post-mortem on the Mises Caucus and maybe where mistakes were made and certain failures were made, I think, and I told Dave this, and we talked a little bit about this in the stream we did before the debate, where like I think doing a postmortem on the Mises Caucus takeover and era and what went right and what went wrong is worthwhile, and we should do that. We should learn from successes and from failures. So like again, I think these conversations need to have. We would have better conversations if we removed the constant jockeying over like you're not a real libertarian. Just like listen, like I plan on having Amity on my show either this month or next month to talk about Protestantism and Catholicism. And I actually had a Catholic friend of mine, Zach, on a couple of weeks ago too. And I think like on one hand, I think it's really dumb to at this point in history when we literally have like, the concept of like transing your kids and churches where the pastors and priests don't even believe in the resurrection to like make Protestant Catholic debates and gatekeeping and infighting a priority. But I also think it's just healthy to have that like intra-church cross-denominational conversation because you can kind of like learn from each other in that process. And so that's what I've been trying to do with the Zulu crowd, but it does at times feel like it's a little bit one-sided, if I'm being honest, where like I'm super interested in hearing what they have to say, but they sort of just want to dismiss, our camp as if we're just a bunch of sellout prags. Yeah. And that is creating, I think, a lot of the, like, it's one thing to sort of like leave the egos at the door and just be like, let's talk about where we disagree from a understanding we're on the same team. It's completely different when you show up to that conversation and you're like, you're wrong and you're not on my team.
Right.
And it's like, well, what team am I on? What team are you on? This makes no sense. I made this point, I think on X the other day, where I was just like, if you even try going to a normie and you try explaining to them the difference between minarchism and anarchism, right? Like imagine like you're a minarchist and, we're living in like a communist takeover and anarchists are being gathered up and put into the boxcars. And you're a minarchist and they come, you're like, no, you don't understand. I'm not an anarchist. I just, believe in a government that is funded voluntarily and that only enforces the non-aggression. Like they're not gonna be able to understand the different, because like compared to the status quo, you're going in the boxcar. Like minarchism and anarchism are there's differences, but compared to everything else,
right. They're huge to you. They're literally nothing to anybody else because we're all crazy. Like to the rest of society, we're all crazy. If we're not hardcore right-wing Trump supporters to Republicans and saying that Jeffrey Epstein was a Democrat hoax, then they think that we're liberals. And if we're not, open borders, whatever, anti-Trump as the day is long, or what have you, take your pick, then we are Republicans. So it's like, who cares? Who cares if they call you? Because it's all fake and gay. But we do got to put in a little bit of an ad break here, Jacob. And I think we're going to get some comments after that. But we don't take super chats here because YouTube does not allow it. So put in all caps fake super chat in the comments if you have a comment that you want us to read out loud and ridicule you for. We will give you the tongue lashing that you deserve for whatever you think deserves our time, our energy, our day. It better be worth it. Otherwise, we're going to make fun of you. And if after we hurt your feelings, you feel like we have harmed you or aggressed upon you in any way, you should contact Lone Star Injury Attorney.
The great William Shakespeare once said, "First thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers." That's right. It is common knowledge that literally no one in the known universe actually likes lawyers. That is, until they're saving your ass. Max the Axe at Lone Star Injury Attorneys is a professional ass saver. A rare breed, though he be a lawyer, he is indeed a principled libertarian, a defender of the injured and downtrodden, a supportive, faithful Downers Club member, my personal favorite, and a shockingly kind and hospitable fellow at an award-winning personal injury law firm. So if you've been injured on the job, in an automobile accident, or some other form of cattywampus beyond your personal control, visit LoneStarInjuryAttorneys.com or just Google Max the Axe for maximum results. Consultations are free and you don't pay a single dime unless you win. Go with the pros at LoneStarInjuryAttorneys.com and get your ass covered.
And we are back. Now, before we get to some chats, I did want to bring up, I'll give you guys a little bit more time for the fake super chats to come in, but I did want to get your thoughts on this, Jacob. This kind of harkens back to a lot of things that we've been talking about and does give a good display of just libertarians on the internet. I think it's a good sample of what I've been dealing with over the last couple weeks. So it started with this post of Captain and Capistan. Seems like a cool guy. I don't know who he is, but he says, the single most interesting and important question in libertarian theory is, how the hell do we get from here to there? People acting like this question is already solved, has a logically correct answer, are not to be taken seriously. Do you want to comment on that before we get into my main point here?
Well, I mean, I think Dave's follow-up to that was also very well-warranted, which is like, which was kind of my point when I was saying, can we just get back to the 90s? It was just like, can we just avoid the disaster? Like, we're literally on, it's not that we're on a suicide path. It's not like, hey, if we don't stop this in 20 years, we're going to have a collapse. Like, no, like, we're staring down the barrel of economic collapse, of war breaking out even more than it already has. So I think we do have to kind of prioritize like what we're doing. And listen, there's division of labor.
Take the penny, bro.
There's division of labor. A good question to them be like, would you steal a penny if it meant you could press the Rothbard button or something
Right.
like that? But listen, I think like there's a division of labor, and I think at some point this actually came out in the debate. Zulu was like, maybe there's a place for people like Dave who are out there on the main stages and doing what he does, even if some of the purest libertarians are going to critique him. But then Zulu was like, but then there's also a place for me. And I was like, yeah, but like, that's been my contention all along, which is why I have friendly conversations
but Dave's place
with you
isn't saying that
and
your
Dave.
place shouldn't exist. Like, you can be the annoying heel if you want to, or you can be the very, I say this lovingly, autistic, obsessive guy. Like, you can be the guy who digs deep into the theory, but use it to better society rather than tear people down. And it seems like this was primarily to get attention and tear people down. I know it wasn't, and you guys, I know I'm not going to argue and debate his entire philosophy or anything. I'm just not going to, because I don't care about his philosophy. I wish him well and hope that he keeps doing what he's doing, in the sense of educating the people that type of content, the content of, basically it's a math teacher saying, show me your work, otherwise you didn't do the math problem, and just constantly saying that over and over again. Show me your work because I did this out and it doesn't calculate the conclusion that you came to, Dave. I also think that there's a bit of a reach/value, balance here, that you can say what you want and you can keep doing what you're doing, but if you want to come across as an angry person on the internet who is spending their time trying to tear down other libertarians, then that is the outcome that you will receive, and you might get more views on your 3.5-hour video than we do on this conversation, but it's only from people who want a reason to hate Dave Smith. Enjoy that crowd. I'm not a part of it.
Well, I just would also like, I feel like the problem with all these strategies it's always the step two. And it seems like the Zulu strategy is sort of like to reach the remnant and just bite every bullet and be as principled and gatekeeping as possible. And to be fair, like, he's gathered a decent sized following. His YouTube channel is bigger than mine. So like, I'm not gonna like try to say that, I'm not saying this from some kind of like looking down him perspective, but it's
neither.
also like, what's step 2?
Right.
Like we just need to have some humility to be like we're all trying to figure out that step 2. And I'm not saying, by the way, that I know that they're wrong, but it's just that they don't know that they're right. Is my
Right.
whole point. Like none of it, like it is not a given. Like nothing's a given when it comes to trying to figure out how to make any of our ideas come to reality. But I do think that like the point of that debate was not to draw people into the libertarian movement.
Mhm.
I could almost, venture, like if I could place money, I don't know how you could enforce this, but I would bet a pretty sizable amount of money that from the point, I think maybe between his channel and my channel, like 20,000 people or more have watched that.
Mhm.
I'd be hard pressed to think you could find one person who was convinced to become a libertarian from that.
Yeah.
Like it just not, that was more of a we need to get our house in order kind of thing. Like I think it was important, but those are not the
Anybody
kind
who
of
wasn't a
things-
libertarian didn't get 5 minutes into that. Let's be honest.
Right, exactly. So and then even then, making more libertarians is like, yeah, that's useful. I think making more libertarians is probably, it's a necessary component, but it's not a sufficient component. We do, and something that like, listen, I know there's a lot of people who are going to diss on the Mises Caucus, who are going to diss on Angela, who are going to diss on Heiss, and be like, look at all this stuff that didn't work out and it failed, and you compromise. I'm like, listen, there were points pre and post takeover, which people, they would vouch for me. Like I didn't always agree with everything they did. I mean, my call logs from like 2021 to 2023 would, many times include like 2-hour-long phone calls with me and Mike or me and Andrew, me and others. And just like sometimes agreeing, sometimes like arguing about like how we solve certain things and what the correct strategy for particular, whether it was an intra-party problem or coalition problem or whatever. So like, but they're trying to do something, right? They were like, hey, we know, like, we at least know that like the old guard, what's been tried with the LP for the past 50 years hasn't worked. So like, we need to try something else. And maybe we still need to try something else. But hey, at least what they tried helped get Ross freed. At least what they, at least what they did was like, I think
Roger
it's
Veers,
even where I think Angela and Mike and the Mises Caucus made mistakes, I still think they're directionally correct. They're trying to figure out how to be principled and yet operate in the real world. And it feels like
done.
we're
anything at all done.
The movement, which is still a young movement, so it's not like, it doesn't mean the movement's doomed to fail, but for as long as the movements existed, we have basically pivoted from one extreme to the other. We've pivoted from just, 100% unadulterated radicalism all the time, divorced from reality, divorced from acting in the real world, or we become complete sellouts and pragmatists and just try to, the Gary Johnson, Bill Weld approach, which so like we know those don't work. We do need to find some way to be radical and listen, I'll give Zulu credit. Zulu did in his 3.5-hour video did say that there is some credence to the idea of the kingmaker strategy or the using the voting block as a leverage point in theory, even if perhaps there were points with either with Trump or like with the Blake Masters thing in Arizona where it was like bad execution, but there's a version of that which can be used by a growing and vibrant liberty movement. But let me tell you something, like the number one reason people don't join the party and don't join the movement is almost always the feedback I get is just like they see the infighting, they see the level of just like unhinged
Thankfully,
behavior.
y'all were getting along when I stumbled upon you because I was like,
Right.
oh, hell yeah. I liked Daryl Perry's what's next? Toast and license to bake toast in your own damn toaster. I was like, these guys are crazy, but they're getting along, and they were at least on the surface they were getting along. I'm just glad that I was, I don't know, dumb enough to not to dig before getting involved, because you guys are on to something. If you could just smoke a bowl and chill the fuck out a little bit, I feel like there would be a lot more liberty in your life, at least, if not the entirety of the world. But what do I know? I'm just a lowly, humble propagandist. Anyway, let's. I did want to go through a bit of these comments, and this is. We'll just breeze over this. This is just a conversation. I don't know who this guy is or what his background is or anything, but in response to the Captain and Capistan thing that I posted, we got this from The Liberator. The Liberator says, "Commerce isn't theory." First off, before we go any further, can you explain this comment? I'm just asking if you're more Tylenol'd up than I am at this point.
I think what he's trying to say, so it took me a minute, but I think what he's trying to say is that there's a difference between theory and practice, which is kind of like, well, yes, sort of. Like there is a difference between the theory of like what is true and what is false, what is aggression, what's not aggression, and how do we then like get from here to there? How do we apply these things? How do we even like, there's even a difference in libertarianism, big picture, between the legal theory itself and then these sort of writings from like Rothbard and Friedman and Hoppe and Murphy that explain like, well, like let's apply some understanding of economics and insurance and judicial systems and contract theory and theorize and explain how a stateless legal order would solve conflicts and provide for defense and provide the things from modern society that we still want, right? So like, yeah, and that is kind of different than the pure theory that is just sort of like, when is it like the right use of force, right? When is it legitimate to use force? So I guess that's true, but that also kind of feels like no one's contesting that. And I feel like that was kind of Captain and Capistan's point, where he's just like, the biggest question isn't even necessarily on the theory, but just like, okay, like we agree enough on the theory. Like even where we disagree on the theory, we're all on the same book and within the same chapter, even if we're not on the same page.
We all believe in libertarian Jesus. Let's calm down a little bit.
Yes. So it's like we're all kind of bickering even more so about where we disagree on, just like, how do we get from point A to point B? I mean, Christianity has an advantage where at least the getting from point A to point B, it's not the church's job. I mean, I guess maybe it's the church's job if you're a post-mill. I'm not a post-mill. That's a whole different inside baseball Christian eschatology debate. But except for certain post-mill Christians, we would all agree that like, well, like it's not on us. Actually, the horseshoe theory is whether either if you're a radical dispensationalist or a radical post-mill, then you think, well, we have to do X and then Jesus will come back. But other than that, Christians, I think if you understand what the Bible says, know that like Jesus is going to come back when he's going to come back. It's not on us to make that happen. Libertarians don't have some kind of like, because it's not a religion, so we don't have that kind of promise. So, yeah, anyway.
God bless you for giving the long form answer, sir. That was a four-word comment, and you gave the libertarian autistic version response and the Christian version response. I appreciate it.
I made sure I was well stocked on Tylenol before I jumped on.
I like it, and so did this guy. Let me know at any point, Jacob, if you think that I have sinned against libertarianism or Christianity in these comments. I'm okay with it. The Liberator said that comment. My response was, if this is your own personal bio, you might have an unhealthy obsession. The Liberator, at Liberator ASM. His bio is, free enterprise will not only set the marketplace standard, it will determine the standard for acceptable behavior in any given society. Now, I don't know. Am I wrong to think that if that's your own personal bio, you might be a little too deep into this stuff? Am I wrong?
I think people need a personality beyond libertarianism. Like beyond even just having a worldview that goes beyond libertarianism, like you need a personality that goes beyond libertarianism. And it does seem like for a lot, and listen, I can sympathize, I guess, to some extent with like, I wasn't a libertarian when I was young, but I got politically active. And so like in my young 20s, I was a democratic socialist vegan activist,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So and there was a point in time where I was
you were
like one
gay.
of those insufferable. I was flaming homosexual. um and I was one of those, like, literally uh kind of the same energy, you could say. I was one of those insufferable vegans that was like literally like, have you heard about our Lord and Savior, tofu, or plant-based milk or whatever? And have you watched, I would literally, like, I was part of a group that would, like, go out there and make people watch videos of factory farming and try to, like, push
Mhm.
them to adopt like it. So, like,
Scare
I
them
get it.
out of bacon.
Right. So, like, I think young people, there's just something that's, again, they're probably going to interpret this as talking down on them, but, like, I think it's just true that, like, when you're young, you do kind of, like, part of that maturation process is you find something that resonates with you, and you probably will make that way too much part of your personality and belief system. And something that comes with age and maturity is becoming a more, like, holistic and integrated person.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And I could say stuff on that, but probably much to some commenters' chagrin. I do want to play a quick Nick Fuentes clip on this guy. It reminds me of this guy's bio, and a lot of, I mean, I'm in the conspiracy world too and all that. So, no shame. I've had my own obsessions, but I think this kind of summarizes how I'm feeling about it.
Larry Silverstein is a piece of shit devil cunt sent $25. What good, Nick? Since you're commander-in-chief of the America First movement, would it be annoying if I print out a bunch of America First stickers and post it on every stop sign to get the message out?
Yeah, please don't do that. Larry Silverstein is a piece of shit devil cunt. Please don't try to represent me in any way. I'm begging you. The guy who's, like, so invested. Username? Larry Silverstein's a piece of shit. Like, who are you people? Who are you people? Like, what? Guys, like, create an account. Okay. Enter your username. Username. All right. Fuck Mark Levin. And choose a password. Choose a password. All right. Israel did 9/11. You need a special character. Exclamation point. Think they got the message on that one? You think you got the message across? Guys, like, signing up for his Chick-fil-A app. Pick a username. Pick a unique username. Don't include your birthday or last name. Ha, don't worry about that. October 7th was fake. That's my username. What do you think about that? You go to, like, Burger King. Larry Silverstein is the devil. Your Whopper is ready. Order number 67. And the best is, like, it crescendoed. The username, Larry Silverstein is a piece of shit devil. And then all caps, cunt. Like, he got mad as he was... It prompted him for a username, and his first thought was like, lucky Larry. Lucky Larry wasn't there on 9/11 because I choose to. Maybe we need to relax. Maybe it's time to relax a little bit.
Now, I don't agree with Nick Fuentes on everything, as one is obligated to say. No, I really don't agree with him on a lot of things lately, but I do agree with him on that, whether it comes to this guy, this commenter on his page, or the commenters probably in our comment section that we'll get to, I swear, in just a minute, or, libertarians, Christians alike. Just, if your entire personality is wrapped up in this is true, and I know it because I've got it all figured out, and you're the devil if you don't. It's just calm down. That's all I'm asking. Just calm down.
Nick is literally in transition, in my opinion. I don't mean like gender transition. But what I mean by that is that, like, he is someone who, as a young person with his own ideology and the Groyper stuff, like, was sort of like in this weird ideological circle and suffered from audience capture and being young and making something too much of his personality. Because, like, Nick from 7 years ago or 8 years ago wouldn't have that take that he has now. And I know some people want to be really cynical and think that, oh, he's only pretending to moderate so he can kind of do this Mott and Bailey and get plausible deniability. And listen, I don't know, maybe, like, I can't say I can read Nick's mind any more than you can read Nick's mind. Like, no one knows. We're all just speculating here. But I think what we're seeing here is that Nick is going through this process of maturing and realizing that like there were mistakes he made and that his worldview is kind of like lacking in some humility and in some like being more integrated into society. And there's still like a lot of stuff he gets obviously very wrong, and things he says that I think are not just like wrong on libertarian grounds, but like insofar as he claims to be a Christian, I think he makes statements that are incredible distortions of Christian theology.
Sure.
But it's like, you know, what you see is someone kind of wrestling through that tension. And I think he's kind of stuck in this place where he's kind of boxed himself into a corner where he got this following by saying the most outrageous things and biting every bullet. And yet like, that's good for kind of creating that online following. But is that going to help him live a good life? Is that going to help him like have a family and be fulfilled? Is that going to lead to like a positive change in the world around him? And I guess maybe the libertarian purists could say, well, it won't because he doesn't have the correct ideology. And I'm just like, okay, but
he
like,
doesn't have the nap of Christ in his heart.
Right. So I don't know. Like, I guess you could say that, but I think what's more plausible from my mind is that he's dealing with that. And again, not even like I listened to that Piers Morgan interview, and it was one of those things where like I was like, man, there's times where I think Piers Morgan is almost saying something that's a legitimate question. He's just saying it in the most boomer and like cringe way possible.
Oh,
and so
man,
of course Nick's going to
post.
respond. Of course Nick's going to respond with his energy, but also you can tell he's kind of like stuck between this like wanting to grow up, but he's made a brand out of being that person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of everything. I'm like, that clip you played is exactly what I said. Like, you need a personality beyond the nap.
Yeah. I just had to bring this up before we get to comments. Piers Morgan, in response to all that, said, "Memo to all groypers. When you call me a boomer, I take it as a massive compliment. I literally use the word boom constantly on here to celebrate everything from Arsenal goals to England wickets and at Pearson censored ratings. I am very, very proud boomer," which is quite literally the most boomer response to being called a boomer that you could possibly come up with. And that's just a little bit of levity to this very contentious situation that we have here. But any thoughts on Boomer Pierce before we get to chats?
Not much. I mean, I'll say I made a joke to Dave when Pierce had that one like the one lawyer who's like a Israeli defense lawyer or something for like the Israeli government.
Yep.
And like the entire time Dave wasn't even like saying anything. It was just Piers interrupting her all the time and just saying like, you know, that's BS. That's baloney. What a, you know, and all the different British you know, ways of saying BS. And I joked I joked to Dave afterwards. I was like, it's amazing how your Jew powers allowed you to just literally take over Piers's body and mind and make all your arguments for you. And I guess he just failed to mix that potion up before Piers interviewed Nick.
Yep, it's pretty good. I like it. Now, let's do some comments, and then I've got one or two things, but I won't keep you too long. And you've had a busy day, and you've got a busier night because you've got more debates to break down on your own by yourself in a dark room somewhere. Thank you for being here. Impure Hunter says, fake super chat. What do y'all think about the Reverend bearing false witness against Dave earlier today? Just straight up lying by cropping out a post and saying he was attacking Erica Kirk. And I do have that here. I can probably find it.
Good, because like I saw it, but I was just like, this is stupid, and I gave zero bandwidth to actually reading it.
Yeah. Well, in general, we've seen, you know, reverends taking political sides. Is there a line that they should take, that they're morally obligated to take? I think that there's an argument to be made that there hasn't been enough of a moral, like, political side when there's so many moral back and forths politically. But where are you at on the church even weighing in on the political stuff?
So I obviously think that there's a danger where you don't want to be a reverend or a pastor or a priest or bishop or whatever flavor of spiritual leader you have on your denomination. I'm trying to be very ecumenical here, where you don't want them to get up and be like, unless you're a card-carrying libertarian or Republican or Democrat, then you're not a real Christian. You have to affirm all these policy positions. And but also, like, you have to realize on the other end that, like, if you were a church in, like, Nazi Germany and just being like, well, who's to say what's right here? Some of my congregation think that we should round up Jews and some don't, and that's just, personal conviction, right? Now, obviously, like, there's a line, and one might even say that we don't know where that objective standard is on when the church should weigh on political matters and when it shouldn't. I think this is kind of what our I'll turn this into a shameless plug here. This is sort of what we at the Libertarian Christian Institute are devoted to doing. We're devoted to pushing Christians to consider more about what the Bible does teach us in realms to government and politics. Because I think that there are some things that, even though I would make an argument from the biblical worldview for pretty much every libertarian position you could imagine, I will distinguish between the ones that I think are like, these are non-negotiable, these are closed-fisted positions. Like, I would say, like, I think I'm very close-fisted with being pro-life. I don't think you can be a Christian and support the murder of the unborn. But in terms of, like, should the trying to think of a good example here. Should the government have a public education system? I'm obviously going to make strong biblical arguments and rational arguments against that. But it's not like there's a clear-cut teaching in scripture that says, like, thou shalt not have public education or something like that. So, so you have to kind of distinguish between the close-handed and open-handed issues. But the problem is the church has sort of, like, done the opposite. Like, they don't do that work. And then the only ones who do dive into it do it in the most, like, dumb ways possible, where they just literally, like, it's actually, they either do it to where they're not real Christians and it's just like what's the word I'm looking for here? They're co-opting Christianity to champion, like, LGBT, SJW, social progressive nonsense.
Sure.
Or they're just like Mike Huckabee and they're Christian Zionists, and it's just like, the Bible says one thing about government, and it's that you must always support Israel and you must always bomb brown people across the world to support Israel. And it's just like, I don't know, maybe we can, like, or you have sorry, I keep clipping here. I get too animated. I lead into my mic.
It's all good.
But I think there's been this impulse in mostly evangelical, but even other denominations in Christianity, to kind of see those extremes and go, well, we don't want to do that, so we're going to stay out of it. And then they're overcorrecting, where they just don't want to comment on anything. It's like, but you can't be completely silent. So
yeah,
you do have to do that work. And actually, that's what we're doing here at LCI. We do have a fundraiser, by the way, I'll plug quick. If you go to libertarianchristians.com/donate, every dollar that you give this month is matched. So we appreciate that.
Nazi fags.
Sorry, wrong button. Oh, nope. This one. Nope. There we go. All right, we got it. So back to the comment. It was in reference to this. Reverend Jordan Wells said, "What's despicable? Attacking a grieving widow while shielding Candace Owens. That's Charlie's book. She's raising their kids, carrying his torch. Dave Smith, pure demon. Notice the pattern. It's the same anti-Semitic mob. She's doing exactly what a real wife does. Protect her children. Honor her husband. Who else speaks for a dead man but his wife? You clowns wouldn't know loyalty if it slapped you." And this is what he's supposedly responding to, is Dave Smith saying, what's despicable is pretending to speak for Charlie. What's despicable is lying about him and promoting your book in the immediate aftermath of his death. So this reverend took this quote from Dave Smith, where Dave Smith was actually talking about Josh Hammer. Josh Hammer making the claim that, like, one of Charlie's last wishes was that that Josh Hammer's book be read by everyone. I'm paraphrasing here, but Josh Hammer used it to promote his own book, and that's what Dave Smith was responding to. This supposed reverend took that, which is very easy to prove that it wasn't even in reference to Erica Kirk promoting Charlie Kirk's posthumous book that he's promoting, or she's promoting right now. But he used it in such a way to make it seem as though Dave Smith was talking about a grieving widow, supposedly, that he was not. And I don't have the comment here to actually remember what the question was that was asked about that. Here it is. What do y'all think about the Reverend? So what do you think? What do you think, Jacob?
I mean, I think it's kind of what I said. Thou shalt support Israel no matter what. Like, I think that's what's coloring all of this. If you just really want to get to rock bottom, like everything, and to be clear, I'm not one of those people I'm at least not convinced there's any strong evidence that Israel had anything to do with Charlie Kirk's death. I'm certainly open to evidence being found and uncovered. I certainly have a hard time really buying the official narrative as well. But regardless of that, like, even if you want to buy the official narrative, what the real thing that came out of Charlie's death is the extent to which Israel is sort of what's driving the fraction in our country as well as on the right. Because it is like the reason why Dave Smith has become the this sort of like I was gonna say that this person who's being like crucified, but I don't know if I should call, talking about a Jew being crucified is a little bit I don't know if that's blasphemy or not, but he's certainly he's certainly being targeted by a lot of people on the right in the media, and it's like, it's just transparent. If you're paying attention, you can tell that it's entirely motivated by the fact that Dave is, I think they hate Dave because it's easy for the Ben Shapiros and Mark Levins of the world to dismiss the Nick Fuentes types and to dismiss like the Cenk Uyghur or Queers for Palestine types, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you get someone like Dave Smith, who is a right-wing comedian and a family man and a hardcore libertarian, it is basically like attacking Israel from a position that can't be, like, they can't deal with him on the actual issues. So yeah, they're desperate to find any way, including, I think, disgustingly using the death of Charlie Kirk as one more opportunity to try to drive that wedge and box him into this corner, because then they don't have to actually deal with him.
Absolutely. Now, another fake super chat from at Genome4308 on YouTube says, fake super chat. The Libertarian Party was promised to me 3,000 years ago. Any thoughts on that, Jacob? Go ahead.
Well, if it was promised to you, then that means it's always yours, and I guess you have a divine.
Those who bless Noam will be blessed.
Right. So I guess I guess that means that, like, you can even violate the non-aggression principle to obtain that promise, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Now, let's. There wasn't y'all didn't get in your fake super chats. That's on you. And I'm not reading through all of this wall of screed to find the most valuable person who was mad at us for this conversation. But I did want to get your thoughts on this, Jacob. Ace Archist on Twitter says, there needs to be an actual formal split. We cannot exist under the same naming convention as people who support state agents zip-tying people and throwing them in the back of a car for merely being here illegally. They are not friends of liberty. They are its enemies. So do you support ICE, or do you support deportation in general? And do you think that those who support deportation at all should be in a different party than Ace Archist, also notable anarchist?
Yeah, and I like Ace. I think Ace is someone who I've interacted with a lot online, and even where we disagree, I think he's a good dude. So there's kind of three different questions there. Do I support ICE? And that's just easy blanket no, because it's like, even if I was a minarchist or a constitutionalist and I thought we should have mass deportations, it'd be like, okay, but like this sort of like federal mandated bureaucracy, police agency is not like the right way to go about doing that, and it comes with all sorts of trade-offs and violations of constitutional norms and liberty that you should just be against that. So do I support mass deportations? No, I do not. I think that there are reasonable concerns about open borders and mass migration, but and to be clear, I think not just I'm not just paying lip service. I think they're very reasonable concerns. I think that importing 20 or 30 or 40 million people from like third world countries and cultures into America, it's kind of really hard to make an argument that's good for liberty or, even good to if you're a Christian and you want the culture to move in a positive direction, it's kind of not good from that perspective either. But I think that I can be against the state mass importing people, and I could recognize that mass deportations is, even to the extent they've tried it, they haven't deported everyone who's been here. And it kind of proves the point that we're already, just to deport the amount of people that we have done, which the right is like, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's like, okay, that means that you would be advocating for even more of a police state, even more of a suspension of due process, and even more of granting the federal government the sort of unilateral ability to just kind of say, well, because these people are terrorists or they're illegals, that we can do whatever we want and we don't have to, we're not going to be held accountable for that. That's how you end up with bombing boats off the coast of Venezuela. And so I just don't think I think within even the Mises wing of libertarianism, there's guys like Hoppe and others and Rothbard who made arguments against absolute open borders while you still have a state. And I think that I'm open to having that conversation about what could we do that's not open borders, but that's not closed borders. But instead of having that conversation, yeah, there are some libertarians who are actually just becoming apologists for ICE and mass deportations. And I'm, as far as should they be gate kept out of the party? I don't know. I'm not
Losing
the person
two
who
says bordertarians do need to go. So they disagree with whatever you're about to say.
What I want is to change their mind and convince them that they're wrong. I think that there's a difference between the movement and the party. I think you can be in the party and hold unlibertarian positions. Now, I don't think you should be the person who is selected to be a national delegate or held up as a person to run for office or a person to run for an intra-party position or to be an at-large or anything like that. I want to find a way to protect the libertarian essence of the party and yet also allow people who are directionally maybe moving towards us but aren't the whole way there yet to kind of have a space to do that. I think that's kind of how churches work. I think Spike Cohen made this point on a show I listened to him recently where he's because he's a recent reconvert back to Christianity, and he was churches don't say you can't attend church until you affirm the Nicene Creed and Apostles' Creed and can recite the Westminster Confession or something like that. But there's being a casual attendee of church, and then there's being a committed member of the church, and then there's being going through a catechism or a Sunday school, and then becoming part of the deacon or elder team. And so I think that's kind of the way I approach that conversation is I think you do need to have some sort of gatekeeping mechanism, but I would kind of say you need to distinguish between laymen and people who are actually going to be representatives or hold positions of authority.
Yeah. And we've seen it. I've seen it just in the time that I've been around, when I first came in, there was no Dave Smith in the Libertarian Party sphere. There was no Tom Woods in the Libertarian Party sphere. There was no Scott Horton in the Libertarian Party sphere. It was Michael Heiss and the Mises Caucus that brought a bunch of those guys in and said, hey, this is going to be different. We're going to do this. And then there was a whole lot of pushback of people saying you're still not pure enough, and Ron Paul's still not pure enough. And now those people have kind of still drifted away, and I completely understand why they did. And I also understand even why people like You mentioned Pete earlier, Pete Quinones and like Mark Clare and those types. I understand why the evil heretics who went post-libertarian did, because they just get tired of hearing the same I've got it all figured out over and over and over again, while nothing gets done by the people who are insisting they know the purest, most principled, most even, no offense, Jacob Hornberger, like, yes, you are good. 101 libertarian, you are good. You don't make a good candidate, and it's not, that message isn't working. And I don't want to be a pragmatist. I'm not your Bill Weld. Neither is Dave Smith. Some of us just want to move the needle a little bit. And there's a whole lot of people that are like, stop moving that needle. That's the wrong needle. We don't like that needle. Nope, that needle is not pure enough. And it's like, well, you're not moving any needle. And we just want to move any needle toward the direction of liberty, toward the direction of making our heaven on earth. And more so than that, I would recommend everybody go touch grass, and that'll make more heaven and more liberty on your earth currently if you just shut the fuck up on the internet every now and again and go live your life. But we should probably wrap up here soon. You got any final thoughts? And then I think I have one more thing that I want to throw in here before we get out that is Christian-based and not this libertarian bullshit. But any final thoughts, and where can people find you, Jacob?
Yeah, so I guess my closing thoughts is sort of just to maybe call back to kind of what I said at the beginning, which is that I think that there are legitimate points being raised by both camps that are sort of represented by that debate I moderated. And I think these conversations need to continue. And because we kind of then got to the end, we're talking about ICE and whatnot. And like, yeah, I do see some libertarians who I think have gone, they took a step beyond just how do we be effective in the real world. And they just said, well, screw principles. We're just going to pursue power. We're just going to pursue whatever we can get, and just sort of being driven entirely by just appealing to normal people. I don't think Dave fits that description, even though I think Dave does get the immigration thing wrong. And I think that we can criticize that. I think that it's just better to like I've criticized Dave on his immigration position, and it didn't really cause any huge wave or problems. It was just like, hey, I get your concerns, but we got to consider the trade-offs here.
3.5 hour documentary about it?
No, I guess I didn't. But
that's where you went wrong.
I feel like that's where I went wrong. I think that we, as a movement, need to, actually, it's funny. It's like, to go full circle, I think both sides agree that Ron Paul was kind of the example of the right way to do it.
Yep.
Although there is kind of a weird thing there where the Zulu camp would have to say Ron's not a real libertarian, but whatever. I do think that side needs to drop that completely. That is the one point where I don't there's a lot of points I think they make that are legitimate, but this whole you're not a real libertarian thing is just such stupid old thing.
It's so
tiring. It makes no listen, if you want to say that Ron Paul isn't an anarchist, if you want to say Dave Smith isn't being a pure, principled, consistent anarchist, then fine. That's I would probably disagree with you about Dave, but that's a more defensible claim. But to define libertarian as anarchist is to why do we have different words? Right. I know synonyms exist, but we have the words anarchist and minarchist and libertarian. And it seems to me the more neat way to categorize these things is that you have anarchists and minarchists, and there's kind of a spectrum there, and they're all within this umbrella of what we consider people who are libertarian. And sure, advocate for your correct flavor of libertarianism. Just listen, as a Christian, I'm not a Catholic. I lean in the Reformed camp. You mentioned earlier when I was kind of giving my explanation on sin and the gospel that there's some things you would on a different episode, maybe in the future, in a conversation where you would disagree. And it's hey, that's all well and good. I think those things need to happen. But at no point do I say to Amity, who's a Catholic, or do I say to Mike Meharry, who's Eastern Orthodox, or do I say to my buddy Cody Cook here at LCI, who is an Anabaptist, that you guys aren't real Christians because you don't have the pure, correct 100% across the board doctrine on all these issues. So we just got to find a way to find that middle ground. And it is kind of ironic that both sides think Ron Paul's the model, but then we're at each other's throats so much. It's like, you know, and I guess the last thing I'll say is
Denominations.
you know, listen, I understand that for, I guess, like our crowd, looking at Zulu and his crowd, because they're young, because they do seem to be very like dogmatic and ideological, and it can be a bit of a turnoff. And if you don't want to spend like, you know, an hour on X debating theory, then don't do it. I understand that. But also, like, you know, just try to keep, like, we're telling them to have some perspective, and I think that, like, we need to have some perspective too. I think, and I said this to Dave, like, we do need to make sure that we do hear out people who have good faith criticisms, even if we don't agree with them. And I guess the way I viewed that Zulu's video was that there was a lot there that was wrong, but like, just like separate the wheat from the chaff. It's like, hey, like, here, this stuff here, I don't agree with that, but hey, here's a couple useful insights. And that's kind of the way we should try to approach all conversations within the movement, is to just kind of like, I don't know, just leave the egos at the door and just try to, you know, I still believe in that basic idea of just uniting with anyone to do good. And that's kind of where I think we all need to try to directionally be. And and I appreciate you having
egos at the door, but don't like expect somebody to spend their like a whole lot of their time on you. Like, Dave shouldn't leave his ego, or he should leave his ego at the door when if he decides to have a conversation with this person. But if he decides not to have a conversation with this person, I don't even think that's an ego. That's just a time evaluation. And whatever. There's a whole lot of ways to look at this, but I think you and I agree for the most part on most things. And yes, we disagree on some spiritual matters, and we disagree on this other religion, libertarianism, a little bit, I'm pretty sure. But I'm cool with it. You're down to hang, I'm down to hang, and we can have a conversation about that. And we can definitely get together and have a conversation about what we disagree on in the future. But I did, from a Christian standpoint, and just to lighten it up to wrap up here, bringing it all the way fuller circle back to Skillet at the top of the hour. Did you hear about the Skillet controversy? Okay, and you're familiar?
Yeah.
All right, we talked about that on this show, but I did want to get your thoughts on that very briefly, and then so first, just yes or no, really. Is it satanic?
No.
For a Christian band to play a Christian Christmas song and yell and shout a little bit and use some distortion, is that satanic?
No. Okay. I think like, and it's so goofy, like the Christians who say like there are certain sounds and tones that are demonic, and I'm just like, okay, God made the universe, including all sound and vibration frequencies. So like, they all have their time and place. You know, that's kind of what Scripture says. Everything, you know, not everything is always beneficial. Like, you probably don't want to do the Skillet rendition of "O Come Emmanuel" on your Christmas Eve service,
sure,
because that would not be the time or place, and it wouldn't be beneficial. But like, to reach people who you know, are sort of like into rock music with a classic Christmas hymn in the style that they're going to listen to it, like, that's based. Like, that's awesome. Like, I love Skillet. I got to, you were there. We were at the Rescue the Republic rally, and they were there. We got to meet them. And and that's my favorite Christmas hymn, is "O Come Emmanuel." So when I saw it, I was like hyped up. So I think the people who are losing their minds about that are just
Agreed. Now, to follow that up, here is "Cleansing of the Temple." I'm not familiar with them, but they saw Skillet's devil music for Christmas, and they leveled it up with "Mary, Did You Know?" Here's their version of "Mary, Did You Know?" Oh, no, with sound would be great.
Mary, did you know?
so over the top. For the audio listener, they're thrashing around with blood just everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know what band this is, or like what. So like, I don't like. There's a couple ways to take that, like, because I have no idea who they are. So like, on one hand, I don't know if they're. I don't know if like, because like I could maybe think that maybe they're mocking the song and they're trying to be like provocative and edgy and offensive, and you know,
their name is Cleansing of the Temple. I bet they're a Christian band.
Okay, well then probably what they're trying to do is like
cash
they're
in
covered
on
in blood
the
because
shit.
Jesus is, well, you know, Jesus was covered in blood, and like the whole reason of like Christmas is just about when Jesus came to earth, but like what Jesus came, he didn't just come to be born, he came to, you know, as the song says, that like he would I don't remember the exact lyrics of Mary, did you know? But there's a line in there about that, like he will you know, pay the price
Walk in
of
water,
our sin.
Save our sons and daughters. That
Save
type
our
of
sons
stuff.
and daughters, yeah, and he does that by the shedding of his blood. So like there's kind of a I think there's something about and again, time and place. Like you wouldn't play that at a church service. But there is something about Christians where they can sometimes like they want to make everything like Sesame Street and like Mr. Rogers. And I'm like, yeah, but there are kind of brutal and hard you know, PG-13 you could say aspects to the Christian
shit in
story.
the Bible.
Yeah, like yeah, so like I don't know, like I feel like to some extent, to the extent that Christianity has weakened in the culture and young people have walked away from their faith, a component of that is the extent to which, hey, going back to the whole theme of this, like a way to water down your message isn't just to like change what it says, but to just never acknowledge those kind of more uncomfortable things. And yeah, so I think, yeah, like, and listen, if you just say, hey, I don't like it, then like, okay, cool. No one said you had to like it. No one said you had to listen to it. Like, so it's just people who are it's just people being killjoys, in my opinion.
Agreed. And nobody said, well, some people said I had to listen to Zulu's 3.5-hour take. I did not do that. But Jacob, thank you so much for being here, man. And again, this is much in jest. Like, I'm a snarky bastard, just like Zulu is. It's fine. I have no ill will against him or his message or anything. I think there's better ways to spend your time, quite frankly. And I think you're in a religion, and that's you do you, bro. I mean, I'm a libertarian. You're free to have your religion. I just don't subscribe quite to your religion that you call libertarianism. That's all. You can find me at thesystemisdown.tv or wherever the System is Downs are sold. You can find Jacob at Biblical Anarchy on the interwebs or on the Twitters and most of the socials. Anything else you got, Jacob, before we kick out?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I'm just search Biblical Anarchy anywhere. You'll find me, libertarianchristians.com. Again, I'll just plug the fundraiser again. People want to, again, this is the time of the year where the nonprofits go, give me money. So I'm going to do the shameless. But like, again, I think what we do is important. I think the conversations for Christians and libertarians is like, you know, we're trying to make that integration. You know, especially if you're kind of in our camp here on this issue and you think making libertarianism your religion leads to like sort of a distortion in people's worldview. Well, like, I think what we're doing at LCI is kind of part of trying a necessary part of that correction, because I think the liberty movement, insofar as it, you don't, I'm not saying you have to be a Christian to be a libertarian, but insofar as the libertarian message and movement is just kind of floating in the ether by itself and not tied to some kind of culture or other worldview, that does lead to some of, I think, the negative and kind of goofy outcomes that we're trying to avoid. So that's what we're trying to do here at LCI, is like, we're trying to, you know, commit ourselves to the gospel, commit ourselves to libertarianism, but also like to ground all these things in humility and in, like keeping the main things, if you understand that expression.
Absolutely. Jacob, thanks so much for being here, man. It's been a pleasure having you, I guess, back on. I thought I hadn't had you on, and I was feeling a little bit guilty about it when I brought it up earlier, but I'm glad to know that we have had you on, but now I feel more guilty that we did, and I completely forgot that
It was
we did,
apparently
so.
very forgettable, so...
It happens. It happens. But keep
I
up the
get
great
it.
work, man. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll talk to you next time. And to all of you out there, yeah, just weigh in the comments. It helps with the algorithm, helps boost the numbers. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, just let us know what you think. And until next time, question everything, stay uncomfortable, be bad, have fun, and we'll talk to you then. Peace out.
Thanks for watching. Smash all the like and subscribe buttons because that's what we say at the end of videos. Good night, everybody.
This concludes our broadcast day.
This has been a Dissident Media production. DissidentMedia.net